Meanwhile, back in the Holy City, the archbishops are in a heated discussion about Roland. Priest Main is stunned to learn that the plague the church spread was caused by microscopic demons specifically bred to be invisible. He has no idea how Roland managed to cure it, suspecting he might be using witches' magic instead of the holy medicine. They also discuss the long-range crossbows that Roland's forces have, which shoot relentlessly. Priest Main recalls Priest Tylo mentioning these crossbows before, as he is stationed at Longsong Fortress. This revelation also sheds light on why Duke Ryan was defeated by the commoners from Border Town. The church leaders are both baffled and concerned about Roland's growing influence and capabilities. Another old man in the church is absolutely shocked to learn that their witch, known as Faceless, has been killed. He is certain that Heather will be furious when she returns from the Everwinter capital, because pure witches are extremely rare and very expensive to raise. Scratch that, a pure witch is even more valuable than the Judgment Army. The old man goes absolutely mad upon hearing that Timothy's soldiers ambushed the Longsong Fortress Church and killed the head priest of that place. If you can't recall, this happened when Timothy sent those soldiers to attack Border Town after making them take those church pills. Priest Main quickly realizes that Timothy just wanted to steal those pills stashed in the church. However, he still can't believe the audacity of Timothy to kill the head of the church. But it is true, as I can remember, Timothy indeed stole those 2,000 pills and fed them to his army of common people to attack Border Town. After mulling over it, Priest Main quickly understands that Prince Roland is actually planning to acquire this group of refugees as cheap labor. He can arrange for his witches to cure them and ship them to the western region. The old man agrees, saying if they were not fighting Wolfheart right now, the church would put a stop to Roland immediately. And most of all, the witches in the western regions deserve to be swept clean. But Priest Main tells his old fellow to read this letter before getting riled up. The old man is absolutely blown away to realize that a large number of witches have appeared at the bay and they have destroyed all the current churches. The priests, still in the dark about Princess Tilly's involvement, are puzzled if the witches are migrating from the mainland to the sea. But Priest Main just shrugs them off, saying that they are far away in the ocean and shouldn't affect their grand plans. The current mission of the church is to acquire more land and labor to expand their judgment army. It seems like these priests have finally recognized this once dumb and goofy fourth prince as the greatest threat to the church. Priest Main has decided to lead 100 Judgment Army soldiers and pure witches to permanently wipe out the western region, and decides to deal with the witches at the sea later. The old man is shocked at the idea of Main going himself, especially since the battle at Wolfheart is still ongoing, and Heather has not returned from Everwinter. But, as if on cue, a soldier arrives with urgent news from Heather. Apparently, a huge fleet has docked at Everwinter, and many enemies are attacking the capital. When the message was sent, 2 city gates had already been lost. Archbishop Heather is currently trying to defend as much as she can, but there are too many enemies, and they are using berserker pills. All the ships are flying the same black flag, the Black Sail Fleet of Garcia Wimbledon. The scene transitions to the castle of Everwinter, where Garcia has taken control and captured Heather. Garcia, standing in the grand castle, tells Heather to start praying to her god before she begins her gruesome work. She plans to cut off Heather's fingers and limbs one by one to make her feel the pain and helplessness that the people of Clearwater have suffered. Heather, however, remains steadfast, showing no hint of fear or apprehension. She defiantly asks Garcia if she plans to curse herself with the church's wrath, or if she intends to drift at sea forever without ever docking. Garcia does not seem to like this nonsense talk and simply snaps her fingers. Right on cue, her goons pin Heather to the ground and hold her hand out. They proceed to cut off her fingers with the cold efficiency of slicing cucumbers. As the pain begins to overwhelm Heather, her face twists with agony. Despite the relentless torment, her eyes well up with tears, but she remains determined not to give in. Garcia's soldiers continue their gruesome task, chopping off her remaining fingers, but Heather's resolve seems unshaken even as her body trembles from the pain. Chief Kabbalah of the Sandstone clan looks at Garcia and asks if this is really necessary, since suffering is usually only needed for intimidation or interrogation. Garcia, clearly annoyed, responds with a sharp question about whether Chief Kabbalah even understands how the church tortures witches. Then Heather's chuckle breaks through, quickly escalating into maniacal laughter. She tells them that they clearly don't grasp the church's power or the importance of its work. Heather makes it clear that Garcia has stuck her hand into a lion's jaws and that the church's enemies will be obliterated. But Garcia just laughs it off and says she'll be more than happy to wait for that day to come. The scene opens with Anna happily digging into her ice cream, her enthusiasm as sweet as the treat she's savoring. The prince couldn't help but feel creeped out, convinced that no matter what era they came from, girls always enjoyed ice cream. It turns out the prince had come up with a simple recipe using just sugar, water, yolks, butter, and milk to make the ice cream. Perfect timing, as the other girls soon joined the scene. Maggie walks in with her hair playfully tousled by leaves, and the prince jokes that they must have been looting bird nests again. He pulls out a letter and mentions that summer begins tomorrow, and before she prepares to head back to the bay, he asks Maggie to deliver the letter to Tilly. Maggie accepts the letter confidently. Meanwhile, Lightning remembers that with the end of the month approaching, Maggie will be leaving the palace soon. The prince then gives Lightning a mission, revealing that the map she's looking at is one she drew herself. He asks if she remembers the shallow beach by the mountains. Lightning quickly points to the spot on the map. The prince tells her to take Maggie and fly out there, plant 2 flags at the spot where the beach meets the mountains, and mark it on the map. Turning to Maggie, he explains that if Tilly agrees to send the witches, Maggie will need to guide the ship to this spot, where everyone from Border Town will welcome them with hot air balloons. Lightning perks up with happiness as she realizes that more witches are apparently going to be joining Border Town soon. The prince nods confidently, saying he believes in his sister and that she will eventually join him. Shortly after, we see the balloons soaring through the air. All the girls are absolutely amazed to see that they're actually flying. The prince has named the balloon the Overlook, and Anna gives all the credit to Soraya for helping paint it. The prince agrees, saying the paint's stickiness is exceptional because it needs to adhere closely to the base layer to support such a massive balloon. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure and tension. The prince quickly starts imagining that, since he has acquired DC motors, he can use electrolyzed water to create hydrogen gas. It won't be long before he can build a famous Zeppelin airship. As long as he can find lightweight materials for the frame, a monster like this could soar thousands of meters above the ground. Although the feasibility of dropping bombs from such heights is questionable, it's thrilling to think about invading the church's holy city by land, sea, and air combined. The girls notice the prince smiling, and Lily points out that he's probably excited about the prospect of new witches. The prince keeps grinning, clearly enjoying the excitement of new possibilities. Wendy, meanwhile, is blown away that Princess Tilly and her friends managed to gather so many witches on Slumber Island. The prince nods, adding that Tilly didn't just pull witches from Grey Castle, she also invited witches from the other 3 kingdoms. He even thinks she might have been in talks with the Old Witch Association at some point. Wendy mentions that Kara, their former leader, never mentioned anything about Tilly, but the prince points out that if Kara had revealed Tilly's invitation, no witch would have joined Kara's quest for the Holy Mountain. Wendy agrees, saying that this unexpected turn of events has actually worked out in their favor. They're now living with such a down-to-earth prince while enjoying a pretty luxurious life. Lily, always the arrogant one, chimes in, suggesting that Bay witches might be better since there are so many witches around, making it easier to walk through town without feeling anxious. As their banter continues and laughter fills the air, and that is when Roland's attention drifts to something a bit awkward. He can't help but notice Wendy's rather prominent pair of hooters. Later that day, the prince sits in his office, mulling over the idea that women with larger breasts often experience sore shoulders, and that's why bras were invented. While it's not a well-verified fact, he figures it's worth trying out to create some undergarments. He thinks about how, as Anna gets older, she might face similar issues, and he'd rather avoid the problem of saggy breasts. He starts designing some bras, marking another innovative leap in this old era. The next day, the balloon soars through the sky once again. This time, it carries not only witches, but also Margaret and a merchant. They're all thrilled and amazed to be flying for the first time. Lightning mentions that she's explored the area and marked it down on the map. Margaret gives her a thumbs up for the work well done. The prince turns to Merchant Marlin, teasing him about whether he's about to crap his pants due to the height. Marlin admits it's really terrifying looking down from so high up and feels like he's on the verge of a panic attack. The prince tells him to calm down, explaining that it's a natural response for someone whose feet are off the ground for the first time, much like how people can get seasick on their first ship voyage. Margaret, meanwhile, is fascinated by the giant balloon, but Marlin remains skeptical. He wonders if witches are controlling it with their powers. But the blondie calmly corrects him, saying that Anna is only managing the flames, and the balloon floats because as long as you keep supplying it with hot air, it will rise naturally. The prince agrees, and adds that hot air rises and cold air sinks, which is why it's called a hot air balloon. They continue chatting about this and other random topics. Eventually, Margaret expresses interest in buying a few hot air balloons from the prince. She mentions that they don't have to be big, just large enough to carry one person. The prince quickly catches on to what Margaret intends to use the balloons for. She confirms that if she attaches the small hot air balloons to their ships, the lookouts will be able to spot pirates from far away, as pirates are a much bigger threat to merchants than storms or tornadoes. The prince flashes a grin and informs her that the price won't be cheap, estimating it will be in the thousands of golden royals. Margaret agrees to pay 1,000 golden royals for one balloon right away. She promises that if the balloons become popular, every merchant in the bay will be eager to buy one or two for themselves. The other merchant nods in agreement, noting that while he hasn't fully gotten used to the idea yet, it's clear that this could be a crucial exploration tool for the Crescent Moon Merchant Guild. If the prince can make them, he's certain everyone at the bay will want to buy them, even if it means paying a premium. The prince quickly starts calculating the potential profit, realizing that his markup is almost 500% of his estimated product cost. Plus, since he plans to use hydrogen gas to make the balloons float, customers will need to bring them back to Bordertown for refills, creating another source of income. He can almost see himself swimming in golden royals from these balloons. I remember when the entire town's budget was only a few hundred gold royals, and now he's on the brink of making thousands from just one balloon. As you can imagine, he shakes hands and quickly seals the deal. Meanwhile, back at the fjords, Ash is surprised that Roland chose one of the witches known as Sylvie. She wonders if Roland isn't worried about being exposed, given that Sylvie can easily detect lies and see through fake identities. Princess Tilly, however, is also out of the loop and speculates that perhaps Roland doesn't care about hiding his identity and just wants to work with them on honest terms. Ash then brings up another possibility. What if Roland is actually her brother? And if that's the case, he might not be worried about Sylvie's ability at all. Princess Tilly thinks it's a slim chance, though, because she knows her brother well. Roland Wimbledon would never take on the church for the witches. He's always been better at running from challenges or problems, and he even protested when the king sent him to Bordertown. Ash then asks if sending their witches to the west is really necessary. Tilly reassures her that it's perfectly fine, but Ash reminds her that Sister Lotus is one of the most important witches at Slumber Island. Without her transformation abilities, it'll be tough to fix any broken mud houses or make significant changes to the island's geography. Sister Honey is also crucial. She can command hawks to catch fish, ensuring everyone enjoys delicious seafood. Ash suggests denying the request and swapping out some less useful witches instead. That's when Princess Tilly's patience wears thin. She stands up dramatically and coldly tells Ash that she's sending the witches to Bordertown to form an alliance and won't mess up this opportunity. She reminds her that they're creating a sanctuary for all witches, and she prefers not to label anyone as useful or useless. Ash quickly drops to his knees, apologizing for questioning Princess's intentions. Tilly reminds her friend that Roland picked these witches out of hundreds, including Evelyn and Candle, who are supposedly the least useful. She asks why Roland would choose them if they were truly useless. She's confident that working with these witches will help them understand Roland's choices and how he plans to use their powers. Tilly makes it clear that the witches are not just tools and warns Ash not to say anything like that again. Ash admits her mistake and agrees. Tilly also wants the books they found in the ruins deciphered as quickly as possible. She felt uneasy after her last visit to the ruins and heard that the old association started in Seabreeze Town, with ruins in the eastern forest. She hopes that if the texts in the books match those from both locations, it might reveal a connection. Well, it seems like Tilly is absolutely right. The former leader of the Witch Association, Kara, had that creepy book, which she used in her quest to find the Holy Mountain, but she ended up getting killed by demons. Tilly then apologizes to Ash for scolding her so harshly. While she still doesn't agree with labeling the witches as useless, she acknowledges that if Lotus is away for too long, it will affect the island. Tilly plans to have Lotus return to the bay before winter arrives. In exchange, She will send a few battle witches to Border Town to fend off monsters and months of demons. She is pretty sure that Ash will also go with her in Border Town during the winter. And of course, our tall, scar-faced lady quickly agrees to tag along with Princess Tilly. After all, their relationship seems more like that of a loving couple than just comrades. The next scene takes us to the open sea, where a lone boat is sailing through the waters. On board are Maggie and her fellow witches, making their way towards the border town. Maggie seems to be having a blast as a seagull, and the boat's captain is blown away by Maggie's ability to transform into different birds. He's especially surprised that she can also inherit each bird's skills, like how seagulls can navigate the sea effortlessly and even detect storms. Sylvie, a charming witch with green silky hair, agrees and notes that without Maggie's help, they wouldn't have had the courage to take a new route around the endless cape and dock south of Grey Castle. That's when the captain bursts out laughing, saying that even though Maggie looks exactly like a seagull, he can still tell her apart by the shape of her body. Sylvie raises an eyebrow and notes that she never noticed it, because she claims that she tends to observe things more directly. Well, considering she's one of the witches who can see through fake identities, lies, and all that stuff, it's obvious she does not distinguish between people through their body features. Sylvie then glances at the ship's crew and notices that they look exhausted, so she politely asks the captain to switch their shifts. The captain is amazed that she can pick up on such subtle details. It seems nothing escapes the sharp eyes of Sylvie. As the captain rushes over to get his crew to stop slacking off, Sylvie's mind drifts back to the last conversation she had with Princess Tilly. Tilly had told her that their trip to the border town wouldn't just be about connecting with their sisters and offering help. Sylvie also had a task to uncover Roland Wimbledon's true identity. If there was anything suspicious about him, Tilly had ordered Sylvie to work with the Witch Union to expose his true self. Right now, Sylvie's worried that in the worst-case scenario, the Witch Union might not cooperate with her. They could end up imprisoning her and her crew just to keep Roland's false identity under wraps. She notices other witches goofing around on the ship. Even though everyone seems happy, Sylvie can't shake the feeling that things might not be as easy as they appear. We also spot Molly, who's having a blast and is excited that they're almost at their destination. On the other hand, a little witch with 2 ponytails looks miserable. She can hardly believe they've been swaying on this boat for a week and is amazed she's still holding on. The captain reassures her, saying she'll feel better once they hit solid ground. He adds that he's never seen anyone die from seasickness before and tells her to hang in there. Ash then turns to the little girl and comforts her, saying that Maggie has already alerted everyone in the border town, so everyone should be here to pick them up soon. The little girl curiously asks if Ash and Molly aren't going to the border town, to which Ash explains that she and Molly just tagged along to ensure their safety at sea. After dropping them off, they'll head back immediately since Princess Tilly needs their help on the island as well. Ash warns the girls to stay away from Roland Wimbledon as much as possible. The little witch then curiously asks her senior why they should be afraid of him since he's just Princess Tilly's brother. Ash agrees he's her brother, but makes it clear that being royalty doesn't mean the prince isn't a creep who likes groping witches. While everyone's busy chatting about the prince, Sylvie notices something rising into the sky from the mountains, and she's absolutely shocked by what she sees. The crew's expressions are priceless as they wonder what kind of giant bird it could be. The little witches turn to their senior, asking if she's ever seen anything like it before. The senior admits that this is the first time she's come across something like this. As they approach, Sylvie's heart swells when she sees a welcome banner fluttering in the air. It's clear the Witch Union is greeting them warmly, and the banner's message clearly says, "Border Town welcomes everyone," which just leaves Sylvie momentarily speechless. When the ship finally reaches the shore, Wendy takes the opportunity to greet everyone warmly and welcome them into Border Town. While Ash remains calm and composed around Wendy, the other witches behind Ash still look quite nervous. Wendy and Ash exchange greetings, and Anna soon arrives on the scene. As Sylvie's eyes land on Anna, she notices that all the magic around the witches seems to be gravitating towards her. The sheer amount of power radiating from Anna blows her mind, making her realize just how extraordinarily powerful our girl Anna truly is. While some witches are busy exchanging greetings, others are eyeing the giant hot air balloon with curiosity. Wendy takes the opportunity to fill them in on all the details about hot air balloons. Wendy then asks Ash if she's sure she won't come to town, since the prince is eager to see them again. Ash laughs it off, joking that the prince definitely won't be thrilled to see someone who plans on poaching his witches. She says she's leaving the kids in her friend's capable hands. Wendy, ever the big-hearted woman, or I dare say big booba lady, quickly agrees and assures Ash she'll take good care of them. With that, Lightning pushes all the new witches into the balloon. While Sylvie is still feeling a bit anxious, Anna simply snaps her fingers, and black fire erupts, propelling them up into the sky. Molly waves a final goodbye from the ground, and the girls above in the air take off, heading toward their new home. Up in the sky, Lightning quickly asks the newcomers to show off their powers, while Wendy checks in with Sylvie to see if she's feeling all right. Sylvie replies that she's fine, but admits to having a bit of a headache. Well, it seems like she is feeling more than a surge of pain inside her. She curses herself for instinctively activating her magic eye. She hadn't expected to see so much land at once, and it's the first time she's taken in such a wide view, overwhelming her magic. Wendy advises her to take a few deep breaths, reminding her that everyone feels a bit strange the first time they lift off into the air. Sylvie thanks her and reassures Wendy that she's feeling better already. Meanwhile, the other girls are having a blast as Lightning enthusiastically sings about their prince's heroic deeds, cheerfully narrating all the adventures they've had together. Seems like Sylvie has finally started to relax, realizing the mood is more laid back and fun than she expected, and she hopes it stays that way forever. When they finally arrive above Border Town, the balloon lands near the castle, and the girls are absolutely shocked when they hear the resounding boom of cannons firing. Lightning quickly reassures them, explaining that the prince fired the cannons just to welcome them. Soon after, witches from the Witch Union arrive to greet the newcomers. Sylvie is blown away by the fact that their magic is completely different from what she had expected. She can't help but take note of how friendly the Union sisters have been so far, though she reminds herself to stay on guard just in case. Once they enter the dining hall, they see a feast already laid out on the table. The prince warmly welcomes everyone to Border Town, introducing himself as the ruler of the Western region, and tells them to make themselves at home. While the other ladies are overjoyed to see the feast before them, Sylvie is absolutely blown away by what she is seeing before her. She notices that the prince isn't wearing any stone of divine judgment, and there's no trace of magic inside him. This tells her that the man in front of them is indeed Roland himself, not disguised or controlled by magic. After a hectic day, we find the prince gulping down some delicious wine, letting out a satisfying burp as he leans back on his bed. He's so excited about the witch's arrival that he can't even sleep, so he's drinking to help himself doze off. The prince addresses the newcomers as sisters and asks if their accommodations have been arranged. However, Nightingale isn't too thrilled about him calling them sisters right off the bat, warning him that he shouldn't trust them so quickly. The prince asks Nightingale why she's so cautious, to which she reveals that the witch named Sylvie was speaking half-truths. Although there was nothing malicious in her words, she was very careful in how she chose them. The prince nods, understanding her point. He speculates that Sylvie is likely trying to determine if he really is the true Roland Wimbledon. He reminds Nightingale that if one of her family members completely changed their personality, she'd also wonder if they had been replaced or controlled. This is exactly what Tilly thinks of him, since back in the capital, Roland was notorious for being a lousy slacker and an easy target for bullying. This makes Nightingale curious as well, wondering if the prince is truly Roland Wimbledon. The prince responds that he is indeed Roland, but at the same time, he's not. Nightingale, with her keen sense, quickly sees that the prince isn't lying and asks him why he isn't. The prince grins and simply says that this is just how it is, and there's nothing to lie about. Nightingale just shrugs and says that as long as he remains the Roland she knows, she's fine with it. The prince nods plainly, saying he's always been himself since the day he met her.